welcome to, or welcome back to All Things Moon, Lunar Wisdom for Everyday Life with myself, Kelly Jones. So it's been a while. So I have been to Mexico and back since I was last on here. And I really do feel like it's not just the suntan. I have literally got my glow back on. And I really didn't want to come on here and talk to you feeling how I was feeling sort of pre-holiday, pre-Christmas, all of that. You know, last year I'm going to say was a write-off, but always when we look back with the benefit of hindsight, we can see where the bad times were leading to and what maybe it was bringing to us. So I've definitely got my glow back on, and apologies for the glow of the ring light in my glasses. You know, that's it's just part of doing this. I feel a little bit rusty today. It's taken me a little while to get all the tech set up, and we are in the shadow of, I think it's actually tomorrow. Mercury is turning retrograde tomorrow. So if there are any technical difficulties through this, it's to be expected and I shall stay calm. So where were we last time I was speaking to you? So I think I was telling you all about identity and, you know, who have I become? And I really sat down with that. And I've really done some work around that, sort of sitting with myself. How have I become the way that I am, and the things that I'm attracting to me, and some of the repeating patterns that are happening? So just before I went to Mexico, I went and had some much needed therapy with my amazing ninja friend, Stephen Jakes, who does a system called DTO, which basically literally stands for do the opposite, which was created by another friend called Jonathan Shaw. And it is just amazing, that technique. So Steve is a ninja. So you go round and you sit there and, you know, you're crying about what's going on for you. And by the end of it, you know that whatever has been running like a program as a belief in your unconscious, I know when it's switched off, because I end up having absolute hysterical laughter, and he will like repeat what you've been saying back to you to see if it's still triggering any responses. And I can't even remember what it was that we switched off. That's how switched off it is. But I absolutely have this like bubble of hysterical laughter somewhere through the technique. I highly recommend it. I will put his details in the show notes for anybody who's in need of switching some really annoying behavioral patterns off. So that's something that I've been working on my wealth identity instead of this kind of lack identity that I seem to have stepped into unwittingly, not knowing where that had come from. But obviously these things are always bringing up stuff to the surface, just like things are coming to the surface in the world right now. That's that Pluto transition from Capricorn into Aquarius. Pluto will dredge stuff up, and Aquarius is all about freedom. It's all about the future. It's all about the logic, the intellect, the mind, the genius. And it is related to things like AI and stuff like that. And I actually had the most amazing conversation with ChatGPT, which was around the same time as me going for this therapy session. And I really have shied away from the AI thing, haven't really been interested, really didn't want to be saying, oh, ChatGPT said. But during this wealth identity challenge that I was doing, there was another lady on the group that had used ChatGPT to help create a visual story for herself, because she has trouble visualizing. And actually, I do too. I can feel, I can hear, but actually having really strong visuals is not so easy for me. And so I thought, out of curiosity, I went to see what she'd created on this ChatGPT thing, and I logged into it and started having this conversation. And somewhere through this conversation, I was literally crying. And Tom came downstairs and he was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just having a very strange and weird experience. I feel like I've just had the best therapy session ever with artificial intelligence." And I sat with that for a while and, wondered why was that? What was it that led me to feel so relieved? And I can only put it down to the fact that I wasn't responding to someone else's feelings. So this really brought up in me something that really needed to be healed. And that is being a Cancerian, being a very strong empath person, being sensitive and caring. Somewhere in my little childhood, in my naivety, I developed a behavior which literally was taking responsibility for the way other people feel in reaction to me. And this has been something that's been in the unconscious and something that I have been aware of, but really just not been able to seem to switch off. So this conversation that I had with ChatGPT was just so liberating because it showed me how to speak without fear of response from the other. So I'm going to go into that a little bit more later on in other podcasts, but I've been away for a while and I really do apologize for not coming on here and sharing with you about the eclipse and the Saturn Neptune conjunction that we've just had this week. But I came back from Mexico a little bit jet lagged, and then I came down with the obligatory post holiday kind of fallout. I had a little bit of a cold, didn't really feel like being on here with my nose all bunged up and stuff, and I managed to hold space for the online new moon eclipse ceremony. So it was a new moon eclipse in the sign of Aquarius. So that was on Tuesday just gone, the 17th, and the Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees was just 2 days ago on the 20th. So I held the online moon ceremony on the Sunday, and that was beautiful. And so I have, since I've been back, I've done some astrology readings. So that's something I want to talk to you about now at the beginning, before I go into talking about the actual astrology, is to remind you, I am an astrologer. I'm a Hellenistic astrologer, and I absolutely love to help people understand themselves better, to see that relief when someone realizes that they are being who they're supposed to be, that their birth chart is showing them that everything that's been happening is happening the way it's designed to be. And the one thing that we can do is work on our response to those likelihoods. So when I give you the forecast of the astrology, it's down to us and how we respond to it always, just like we do to the weather. And I've got to say, I'm hanging on to the suntan that's underneath my clothing because the likelihood of it being washed off in the UK right now is very likely. It's literally not stopped raining since before I went away and since I've got back. So I really, really appreciate that vitamin D that I got from Tulum in Mexico. Thank you so much. And I got to live out that wealth identity that I've been working on. So literally planned my airport outfit, walked through the airport like a rock star, through fast track, through security, into the club room lounge, to drink champagne, to be upgraded on arrival at our resort in Tulum, to the preferred club with our own butler, and I lived the lifestyle. So I really have the feeling in me to carry with me forwards as I work on my identity that I'm stepping into this year. So we're going to be looking at that much more. I'm going to be doing some workshops on that, and that is something that I really want to share with you. But before I share it with you, I like to walk my talk. So let's watch this space and see what happens through that work. So just for anybody who's local to me in Essex in England, next Sunday, the 1st of March, I'm going to be doing readings, astrology readings at the Earth Spirit event in Markstay near Colchester. So I will put the details for that in the show notes, and I will be holding a workshop there that's titled Navigating Intense Transformative Times with astrology. So that intense transformative time is something that I have personally been experiencing. So I really feel qualified to be helping others with that, because I think those of you that have been following me the whole time saw that dip down. And I've just recently seen a little clip of myself from a documentary I was interviewed for called Witchcraft and Stilettos, which is all about the stereotype of the Essex girl and how that's related to the Essex witch trials, and how Essex women have suffered in some way, how it has affected us in our lifetimes through being cast as an Essex girl with an actual description in the dictionary. So again, I'm going to put the details of that documentary in the show notes here, because Blatella Films, Natalie, who is the director of that film, is doing a Kickstarter campaign to fund the release of that film. So funding that film. And none of us have been paid for it. We've all done it voluntary. And hopefully everybody who's been on it has donated to it. I have. And it's a really, really important at this time film documentary to be shared out, particularly in Essex, but around the world. I feel that it is relative to all women. And just before I came online, I decided to pull an oracle card. I did a little bit of DTO and EFT on myself, so I really got myself into a lovely space to be sharing with you. And I used Rebecca Campbell's Inner Temple Oracle cards, and I shall just try and show you. If you're just listening to this, then what we're seeing is the Chamber of Transformation card came out, and it's this beautiful glowing woman with golden light all around her, as if there's a supernova just gone off and golden butterflies flying all around her. So that was the card that came out. So transformation is the word that is describing my life at the moment. So when it comes to doing chart readings, one of the things as a Hellenistic astrologer that we can look at is something called your profected year. So that's profect, not perfect, the profected year. And I know since my birthday in July, when Uranus very rudely came in to Gemini, into my house of relationships on the 7th of July and disrupted everything, then move back out again, back into Taurus, and Uranus will be moving back into Gemini fully at the end of April. So watch out for that. We really have strong Uranian energy right now, which is disruptive, chaotic, bringing change, sudden, shocking change. So ever since that day, I have been in what is known as an 8th house year. So the 8th house in the zodiac chart encompasses transformation, is the biggest word. Transformation will encompass death and rebirth. It also encompasses subjects like tax, debt, inheritance, money, so things like that. And so all of that, but the other thing that it really does highlight for you in your life is shared resources. So where you share resources with another person, maybe whether that's in business or in your home in some way. So it's really highlighted that in my life for me, and it's coming up to be transformed. So what I had to experience was the feeling of dying. So really feeling as though my life was falling apart and crumbling. And I know that there are so many of you out there have been experiencing that too, one way or the other. And collectively, that is really what we have been experiencing. So we're kind of in that birth canal where we have just come into the new born. That Saturn and Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries that we had on the 20th, just 2 days ago, is significant of that. But where people are spouting about this new beginning, I can see that we are still very much going through those final stages, that final death before the rebirth, because the nodes of the moon where we are having the eclipses are still in the sign of Pisces and the sign of Virgo. So in the past 18 months, that is where we have been having the eclipses. Pisces signifies the end of the zodiac story. It's where we return to spirit. It's where things can be very vague, very mystical, very misty, foggy, unboundaried. It's very, very spiritual, but it's also very sort of unknown. And this feeling of we don't know what's happening because the end is happening and we don't know what's going to happen at the beginning. So Aries signifies the beginning, but that north node is still in the sign of Pisces. It is yet to move into the sign of Aquarius. So we have just had on the 17th a solar eclipse. That's a new beginning, a new moon in the sign of Aquarius, the future. But that node, that north node, is still in the sign of Pisces. It hasn't quite moved into the Aquarius and Leo axis, where the next set of eclipse seasons will be starting. So we're just getting like a glimmer of that future. And look what has happened in the past week. Look what has been happening recently with the truth being revealed. Saturn's reality check, Neptune's disillusion, the illusion of things like Hollywood glamour coming down and the truth of things being revealed. So that's all still really very much in a process of happening. We're not past it just because Saturn and Neptune have met at 0 degrees of Aries. There is a lot to come. But I know that by July, we're going to have lots of trines happening, and trines are harmonious. Now, that doesn't necessarily always mean beautiful. Beautiful harmony is possible, but it does mean that everything can work together harmoniously. So all the planets that will be aligning in those trines will be working harmoniously. And this is including Pluto and Uranus, with that Saturn Neptune in the middle there. Uranus will be moving into Gemini, so things will be speeding up. So something that I'm going to be really focused on, I'm going to be bringing it into everything that I do, because I do anyway. As a Strala Yoga guide, that feeling of noticing how you feel and responding with care, that helps to create a feeling of safety and security inside yourself, so that we can move into these unknown times, but create that feeling of safety within ourselves, because the days of looking outside ourselves for a leader are over. They really are. This was prophesied by the Hopi, that 11th hour prophecy, where do not look outside of yourself for the leader. We are the ones we've been waiting for, to let go of the shore and allow the current to take you. Notice who's there with you and celebrate that. That is where we are at in this time. So I know you're dying for me to talk about the eclipse and the fire horse. So on the 17th of February, we had a solar eclipse. So a solar eclipse is where the moon crosses over the sun. When the moon and the sun are together, it's a new moon. So we had a new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Aquarius on the 17th of February, which ties in with the official celebrations of the Chinese Lunar New Year, because they follow the lunar calendar. We follow the solar calendar. The solar calendar is kind of that masculine energy, and the lunar calendar is that feminine energy. The Chinese New Year, they have 12 animals and 5 elements. So there are 60 Chinese New Years, if you like. So each year there is an element that is dominant. So this is a fire year, and this is also the year of the fire horse. So if you like, it's a double fire horse year. On that day, it was also, I'm not sure where this gets celebrated, but here we have what's known as Pancake Day, which is, it's relative to Shrove Tuesday, which comes from the word shrive, meaning to confess sins. So that comes from the Anglo-Saxon Christians who went to confess or went to confession before Lent. So they would have a feast day of indulgence before the austerity of Lent. So with Saturn just having entered on the 20th, just 3 days after that, my house of pleasure. This seemed very poignant that, the house of indulgence in pleasure has just had Saturn come in to create a little feeling of austerity. And I know myself and quite a few people haven't really felt like fasting. I've really not wanted to indulge in a lot of food. And I did actually buy some vegan pancake mix, and I had two, and that was enough. I literally threw the rest of the mix away, and I really needed to have like a feeling of clearness in my digestive system to help feel clear up here. So all of those things on one day, all tying into each other. So, largely for myself, the way that I like to share astrology with you is using stories that help to make sense of how the planetary energies are aligning. So I give you my own story because that's what I know the best. And I really do love for you to share your stories with me. So, you can write me an email, you can pop them in the comments, send me a message, and tell me how all of this has been showing up for you. And if you don't mind me sharing the stories, I don't need to tell your name. I can just, share the story. But I'm going to share my own stories. Saturn and Neptune have been in my 4th house of home and family. And this energy has really been showing up for me in my actual home. And with this 8th house year of shared resources, that's really where I've been feeling it the most. And I've spent so much time here as well in the past year or so. And I'm actually really enjoying getting out of here and teaching again quite a bit. But the relief I have felt through just that, literally this past 2 days, I can feel a sense of relief of Saturn and Neptune moving out and into that sign of Aries. So even though that has moved into my house of pleasure, creativity, self-expression, it doesn't necessarily, Saturn doesn't mean all bad and Neptune isn't bad either. Those two together isn't bad. It can be creating structure and foundations to create and make the dream real, to bring it into reality. Yeah. And that's what I am focused on. I've had 3 days to myself as well. So that freedom from the Aquarius literally has played out here. And the eclipse. So if you know your chart, so if you have a reading with me, and I will be able to show you where each different house area is, which sign it's in, what planets are there. So for me, the Aquarius solar eclipse, new moon, showed up in my 3rd house. And that's where Pluto is residing until 2043, I believe. I have got that in my notes somewhere. So yeah, Pluto moved in November 2024 into the sign of Aquarius. Pluto being that planet of power, empowerment, power struggles, ultimately death, rebirth and transformation, dredging up which needs to be released, got rid of, so we can be reborn. So that's in my 3rd house. So the 3rd house is all about communications. Ultimately, it's Mercury, it's the mind, it's how we communicate our mind. It's also related to our local neighbourhood, our environment and siblings. And you can't write this stuff. Aquarius is related to technology. And my brother actually came round on the day of the eclipse to borrow my technology to unlock a device. So he came to my local neighbourhood, my sibling, to unlock technology. So you just can't write this stuff. And my relationship with my brother has transformed over time, particularly since we lost our dad and we've become a lot closer. Our mum lives in Australia. She's lived there for 32 years. When we were younger, we didn't have that much to do with each other. But as we're getting older, our relationship is deepening. So What else? I've also, yesterday, I spent a glorious 3 hours at Poetry Circle in a really beautiful new venue. It's a very feminine, sumptuous surroundings. And I felt again that, it was almost like I'd manifested these surroundings for myself. And I've done that a couple of times recently. And we need to recognize these little things when we are working on ourselves, to not look for where it's not working, but for look and celebrate where it's showing up for us. And at our last poetry circle, we were in a place that felt quite cold and uninspiring, and the lighting in there was really uncomfortable, particularly for sensitives. It was very much this artificial lighting. And I said, we need to manifest ourselves somewhere with much more subtle and ambient lighting. And I walked into this room yesterday and I went, well, there we go. There is our subtle and ambient lighting in the much more feminine, inspiring surroundings. And we really found, our poetry circle found ourselves a bit adrift last year, just like that Pisces energy of feeling adrift. Just like looking for a piece of driftwood to hang on to so we can finally get somewhere. So it really feels good to have secured a new home for ourselves, for our soulful conversations, to fill our creative cups. And so that fifth house for me of self-expression, creativity, that Saturn and Neptune new beginning literally happened yesterday. So I could already see evidence of that for myself. At the moment, Jupiter is still retrograde in the sign of Cancer. So it's basically going over all things related to that sign. So it is still going over my 8th house of shared resources, but ultimately it is expanding my higher learning. It's making me look at my beliefs and ultimately bringing about an expansion of transformation. I really do feel as though I've been through the death phase of everything that Jupiter has been expanding since July last year, and my rebirth is finally taking place. Literally, as I was preparing for this podcast, Jupiter is actually at 15 degrees of Cancer, still retrograding, and it's directly over my natal sun. So it really does seem that I'm shining again after a long period. And this is the words of one of the ladies at my poetry circle yesterday, that I had been tarnished, like when silver gets tarnished and it's not shiny anymore. Everything that I've had to shed is now, that tarnish is being rubbed off, and I'm starting to glow and shine again. And I really do feel that. So, on that note of shedding, what we have stepped out of is the year of the snake, where a collective shedding has been taking place. I think you'd have to be absolutely switched off and completely numb to not notice that shedding that we've all collectively been going through. And we're stepping into this year of the fire horse. My All Things Moon ceremonies, the moon circles that I hold online every 2 weeks, every new moon, every full moon. We have been cultivating for quite a while now our inner wild spirit self. We've given ourselves wild spirit names. We're going to be organising a wild spirit event and becoming the Wild Spirit Collective. It really does feel like we can now leap up, because Aries is the leap of faith, the Fool card in the tarot, the pioneer, that headstrong energy. So we can grab the fire horse's mane and ride bareback into the unknown Aquarius age, that future with more airy and courage and confidence in our own self leadership. That is, that's the vision that we're holding. But at the moment, we are still in the winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. We're still in hibernation, if you like. We are still, using what we have conserving our energy so it lasts us until spring. I was so happy when I got back from Mexico and I saw that the crocuses and the daffodils are starting to come up. and bloom, that sense of hopefulness in all of the greyness and the dullness. I talked extensively about the end of the Pluto in Capricorn era. That was a 16-year transit that brought to light the shadow side of Capricorn, the abuse of power, bureaucracy, and greed, to facilitate a long-term, painful but very necessary restructuring of everything to do with that. Pluto entered Aquarius, as I mentioned, on November 24, travelling through until 2043. So we're already seeing the very beginning of radical transformation, focusing on technology, AI, but ultimately collective power, to the people, a systemic revolution. Pluto is destruction and rebirth, moves through the innovative, community-orientated Aquarius. Humanity will likely to see major societal shifts, including restructuring of governments, decentralized wealth, and the dismantling of old-fashioned hierarchies. We are literally seeing that this week in favor of equality. That is the energy of Aquarius. It's where Uranus in Gemini wants to take us to, very fast. So, I feel like the emphasis on self-reliance, community, spiritual growth, taking responsibility for ourselves and for restoring balance back to our beautiful earth that we have the honour and the privilege of being alive on this time. Key elements of this time is that inner authority, finding strength and guidance within ourselves rather than it relying on external, very flawed leadership, taking action but through wisdom, letting go of fear, living in the present, fostering community, connecting with nature, not clinging on to that old stuff which causes so much suffering. It's time for individualistic, that lone wolf behavior. It's over. It's time for gathering and working together, but with self-responsibility. For thousands of years, solar eclipses have been interpreted by many cultures and ancient astrology as an ominous event, specifically sort of foretelling the downfall or maybe the death and major crisis of solar figures. So that means rulers, kings, prominent public figures. And I think that we can see the evidence of that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that is going to happen, but the likelihood, that it feels ominous that would happen around these times. Eclipses are so connected to the royal families. It's astonishing. There are many podcasts out there where you can listen to much more detailed astrological aspects and things. Just ask me, I can put you onto them. At the moment, I just wanted to give a general sort of storytelling overview of everything that's going on right now. This kind of, the solar eclipses are kind of seen as a celestial event, the eye of an angry god, direct disruption to the establishment, if you like. But really, it's an amplified new moon, triggering sudden, significant turning points in life. It could be a fated ending and beginning. A fated beginning, really, being a new moon. It could be a plot twist that opens doors that you just didn't see before. And myself personally, literally have felt like that recently of, how could I have gone from that to that when this was there all the time? Aquarius is characterized, the archetype of Aquarius is forward thinking, a bit of an outsider. They break convention. They innovate for the collective good. The water bearer, which is the symbol of Aquarius, is that pouring out of knowledge, wisdom, new ideas onto humanity. Detachment, so it's the ability to step back from emotional situations. And I really feel like we need to cultivate that ability, not to be cold, but just to be able to detach from feeling emotionally involved in what's going on in the world so that we can see a better way. Yep. Allowing for clear, innovative thinking. Aquariuses are independent, they're quirky, they value freedom and individuality. They're usually a little bit weird or different. The archetype is closely linked to technology, the internet, AI, progressive, forward thinking, things that redefine how we live and share information. So again, back to our birth charts. How do we know where this is showing up in our own birth chart? So it's really important that you know your rising sign, and that's worked out by knowing your time of birth as near or as exact as you can to the absolute minute. If you don't know, don't panic. It can be, and there are ways of working it out for you. Then we look at your chart, we see where Aquarius is, we see where Aries is, we see where all the planets are, and all the personal planets are like in a big massive queue at the moment, moving through Aquarius into Pisces, getting ready for their arrival at the beginning, Aries. So all the personal stuff that we need to deal with, the ending, the transformation, that is all happening right now as we speak. So I'm just going to go back to the card that I showed you at the beginning, the Chamber of Transformation. I'm sorry this is a long one today, but I've been away for a long time, so loads to catch up on. After this, I am going to be recording a much shorter podcast on the Mercury retrograde and all you need to know about that, because that's imminent. That's, you know, we're literally in it right now. It goes absolutely stations tomorrow. So the Chamber of Transformation card, I'm just going to read out what it says in the book. So these are Rebecca Campbell's Inner Temple Oracle cards. You're not who you once were, and also not who you'll soon be. Now, and now, you're not the same person. Embracing this takes courage, Aries. Embracing this requires faith, Neptune, Jupiter. We're all alchemists, shapeshifters. Transformation is our natural state. But if we're seeking a constant state of perfection, Virgo, eclipses, we'll hold ourselves back from the most glorious transformation to come. True transformation isn't pretty, and I know that for sure. But it is a beautiful, is glorious and messy as we expand and contract, expand and contract and expand. I soften as I expand. Rebirth isn't possible without death first. And it's whilst we're in the fertile void of our becoming that we discover what feels like a tomb is actually a womb. And in this moment, we realize that we're birthing ourselves anew. The Chamber of Transformation card appears when a significant period of initiation is occurring. Initiation isn't always smooth, but it is significant. And when you pass through the birth canal of transformation, you'll be reborn differently than before. It's a crucible in which we're reborn anew right in the middle of our lives. So the Sabian symbol for the eclipse that we've just had, very nth degree of Aquarius, 28th to 29th degree of Aquarius, was the caterpillar emerging as the butterfly. So whichever way you want to look at this is transformative times that we are living in, and it can feel intense. So we really want to take care of our nervous systems. That can just start with our breath. Everything that helps to activate our nervous system, to regulate it. So just to activate our vagus nerve that resides in our body, it goes through our diaphragm and it connects to our brainstem. And if we can activate that by using our diaphragm through deep, full inhalation, full exhalation, we can increase that by humming, by singing, by chanting. And we can really activate that vagus nerve by literally plunging our face into freezing cold water. So put some ice into a bowl of water and plunge your face into it, and that will instantly activate that vagus nerve. The vagus nerve helps to switch on your parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. But we can start to cultivate that feeling of safety and security just by using our breath. And this is all free. You don't need to pay for this. So why are we not using what we have inside ourselves to help ourselves feel safer? Why are we relying on something outside of ourselves to help us do that when we have the ability to do it for ourselves? My astrology teacher, Adam Ellenbass at Nightlight Astrology, is doing a silent meditation call every single day at the moment. Pam Gregory, she is doing these meditations with everybody. What I would like to do is to encourage you into self-leadership, to decide for yourself that I want to feel safe and secure, and I have the ability to do that for myself, and I am going to practice this. It is a daily practice. What is happening daily is an onslaught on our collective nervous system. We are experiencing a collective nervous system collapse, if you like. And the only way, we cannot wait for somebody outside to change that. It takes each individual one of us to do that for ourselves. If we can do it together in groups, even better. But we cannot be doing that daily, really, unless we jump online and do it together, if there is time for that. If you have got time to that, I really recommend it. But if you don't, you find that time for yourself. It only takes a few minutes out of your day. You know, what is more important? What is more important? So, from my heart, I'd like to remind you that you can get an astrology reading with me. Please do like my channel, subscribe to my channel, share my content, help me to get it out further to the world so that we can do and help each other collectively bring that power to the collective in a heart-centered way. These eclipses that we've got coming up are in Aquarius, Community, Leo, the heart axis. Okay, so I'm going to go off now. I'm going to have something to eat, and then I'm going to come back and record all you need to know about the Mercury retrograde that stations tomorrow, literally on the 23rd. This is Sunday the 22nd. So I hope that this has served you in some way, and I look forward to speaking with you all soon.